Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. Mom and I are both grateful that you can join us for another week, and we're super excited today. We have Gurds Hundal on with us. She is a trauma coach and inner work expert with more than a decade of experience in trauma healing, boundaries, and inner child work. In her spare time, she's learning about healing the wounds of patriarchy and the ancient wisdom of limdom. She hosts the Inner Light Project podcast, which was named as one of the best inner peace podcasts in 2020. She is the founder of Infinite Trust Method, a 4-month life transformational program, and Rise Up Sister, a 5-hour VIP day to heal your past and rebirth a new you. So, welcome, Gerds. We're excited to have you on the podcast with us today.
Oh,
Yes, we
thank
are.
you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to talk to you both. Like just our conversation just beforehand. I love talking about just everything with you guys.
Well, wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this work that you're doing?
Yeah, God, it's what I can say. It's been a journey. One second, I'm just gonna do that. I pressed the button. It's been a journey. So I actually was a journalist. I'd always planned to be a medical health journalist. That was just my world. I wanted to help people through information. How can they better their health? And my mum was actually a nurse, so she worked in the kidney renal unit. So there was always like a connection to health, but I thought it was more in the writing way because I loved writing. And then in 2012, I had a bit of a life transformational moment. I had collapsed in the office 3 times. One time I wasn't breathing. I wasn't, if you saw me on a piece of paper, I had looked like I had the amazing life, the amazing career, amazing place where I lived. But inside, I was a mess. I wasn't happy. I was lost. I was a people pleaser. I was a sacrificer. But when you saw me in the journalism world, it was like, she's very happy. She's very joyful. But the pain inside of me just erupted. And one day I was made redundant, and it was like the best thing that had ever happened. I remember my boss telling me, and I shook his hand, and I said, "It's the best decision you made," because my soul knew I wasn't meant to be there. I was meant for something deeper, but I didn't know what that was at that point. And then a few weeks later, I get diagnosed with a cancer scare. And so I'm turning almost 25 at this point. And I'm thinking, great, my life's going to end. Let's drink, go out with friends. What can I do? I'm going to die, because I was feeling at that lonely part at that time in my life. I didn't know where I was heading, who I was. And I remember when I went to go to get my results, I'm sat in the hospital room, and I'm feeling sorry for myself. And I say to myself, what have I done to deserve this? Now, bear in mind, there was nobody in the waiting room apart from me. I heard a voice saying, "You created this." And I went, "What? Am I going crazy now?" Something's not right here. And I thought, oh God, like let me just focus on one thing, then I'll think of this next thing. And I went into the room, spoke to the doctor. They had misdiagnosed me, and I just felt like this sense of relief. I remember running out of the hospital crying, and I heard the words, "It's time to heal." And I don't know what happened that day. I went back to the apartment that I was staying with two other girls, and I literally wrote 30 pages in 7 hours of my whole life. I saw the
Wow.
patterns of my mum's side, my dad's side, why I was the way I was, why was I feeling the way I was. And it just shifted this trajectory of my life. I remember looking in the mirror after, it was silly hours. Like I think I remember like hearing birds in the background. It was that late at night. And I looked in the mirror and I said, I need to love myself. And I just cried my eyes out. I just knew that I didn't know how to love myself because nobody had taught me how to love myself. When I look back now, how could my mum teach me how to love myself when didn't know how to love herself because her mum didn't know how to love herself? So it was a very generational wound that I didn't know that I was holding on to. And so after that, I just went on this deep journey of doing the inner work. I'd randomly like I'd be in a library and a book about healing would come out, or a book about coaching would come out, or I'd be invited to an event, and just strange things kept happening. Things kept coming my way. Then I was offered a radio show, and I didn't want to do it by myself at the time. So I asked a friend of mine, "Do you want to come on the show with me?" And we talked about spirituality, healing. We were doing like live Reiki on the radio. And the more I did that, the more I was unlearning about myself. I was letting go of patterns that I didn't know existed. I worked with young people. I started training them within media. So I kind of left the journalism world, but I was still holding on to it at that point. So I was working with this charity, teaching young people how to produce documentaries and media production things. And then I'd get them to speak on stage and be confident. And they kept saying to me, "Miss, you've got a story." I said, "Oh, no, 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 I haven't." They're like, "No, you have a story." And I remember sharing my story for the first time and they cried their eyes out. They're like, you get us. And I'm like, okay. They're like, you need to share this more. And so they led me on this journey of like speaking my truth, sharing my story, not being afraid to be vulnerable. Because again, I didn't grow up knowing how to be vulnerable because I grew up with parents that, we toughen up. We don't talk about things, we just toughen up and get on along with it. And that was a narrative my whole life. I didn't really share how I felt with friends or people. They always thought Gerds is happy, but they didn't know the pain that I was suffering or the deep shame I had within myself because I didn't know who I was, like I was saying. And as I kept going on this journey where I worked with young people, I then started to heal my inner child because, being around that energy, it does bring out your inner child being free and silly. And then one day I just remember just seeing this poster saying about coaching. I'm like, oh, I kind of do that. I've been doing that since I was a child. Like I've been helping people since I was 8. When I was at university studying, I actually worked in a pharmacy. Very strange. Not linked to journalism at all. But I was offered the role to work in a pharmacy on the weekend and I had to take exams for it. But people would literally hand over their prescriptions to me and tell me their whole life story. And the pharmacist used to shout at me saying, what are you doing? I said, I didn't even say a word. And I know their whole history in 2 minutes. So it's always within me, wherever I go, people would tell me their issues, like older people, younger people, everybody would tell me their problems. And I thought, this is normal, isn't it? But friends would tell me, no, that's not normal. How do you know my family history without me knowing about my family history? I'm like, I don't know. I just sat there and I would know their family's history. Oh, did you know that so-so did this? Like, no, I didn't know that. And so, yeah, I just kind of went into this journey like, you know what? I spent my whole life helping people. I listened to friends' problems. Why don't I just trust the path and see if I should go down coaching? And yeah, I just started the journey of coaching, but it wasn't actually about trauma work at that time. It was like I'd found my purpose. I was like, oh, everybody needs to know their purpose. So I went on this journey like as a purpose coach at the time. And so I started sharing about purpose. Then people kept asking me deeper questions. And then at the time, I was doing a bit as I call my hustling days. I did a bit of network marketing. And again, people kept saying, like, how can you get to that point of trusting yourself? I'm like, oh, you just do this, this, this. I'm like, what? And like, can you teach me that? And so it kind of led me on to the work that I do now. And then as time went by, I was doing really well in my career path, going down the purpose route slash trauma work at the time, but I didn't know it was trauma work at the time. And I was working really hard in the business. I'd walked away from the radio show. I then created the podcast, but at the time it wasn't the Inner Light Project. It was called Get Inspired with Gurds. And then in 20, gosh, when was it? 2015, I got not misdiagnosed. I got in 2015, I collapsed in my apartment and I had a lot of pain and I didn't know what was happening. At the time, they said I had a urine infection. It took 2 years to diagnose that I had a kidney defect that I was born with.
Oh my
And I didn't
God.
Wow.
even know till I was 30 years old. So
Wow.
yeah, I'd spent 30 years of my life with the kidney defect. I remember the consultants being shocked, like, how on earth have you survived? Because you should be having a lot of pain. I'm like, oh, I thought it was a stitch. They're like, no, that's not a stitch.
Yeah.
That is painful. How would you? But again, I learned to toughen up from a young age. You tough up, something hurts, you just get on with it. You don't think about it. Why is this happening? You just think, oh, it is what it is. And so my life completely changed again then. I suddenly was bedbound a lot and I had to face deeper trauma. I thought, oh, I'd done the work. I didn't even touch the surface of work at that point. Honestly, I look back and I laugh at myself, but I had to really sit and mourn the loss of who I was, who I had become, where I was heading, and what was the next stages for me. And so I kind of had to speak to lots of consultants what to do. They wanted to remove my kidney. I did not want to remove my kidney. My intuition said, keep your kidney because you need it. And I remember it was the fifth consultant. He agreed to keep the kidney. He goes, we just need to reconstruct it and then it should be fine. But we normally don't do it at this percentage. They kept going weak kidney, and I really didn't like that term weak because I believe in energy. What you project is what you become. So I was like, just do what you need to do. I trust in what you do. And so I have the operation, and then when I wake up, I hear inner light. We all have the inner light. So that's where the name of the podcast completely changed to the Inner Light Projects. And then when I spoke to the consultant, they're like, oh, well, we've reconstructed your kidney, but you had a 5 centimeter knot at the top of your kidney. I'm like, what? In the pipe? So it's like the uterine pipe where the water comes flushing into your kidney. I'm like, what? And they're like, oh, yeah, we just chopped it out and we stitched you up. I'm like, what on earth? And they didn't even know that till they were operating on me because the scans weren't showing that. I think that's crazy that they didn't see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that just awakened this high, like, I don't can't even explain it. My sensitivity went to another level. Like I started feeling people's energies more than ever before, emotions more than ever before. This toughening up energy just disappeared. Like I really had to soften in the feminine. I had no choice. And as I was getting better after the operation, unfortunately, I got diagnosed with kidney disease. So then I'm like, oh my God, I've just fought these battles. Now I've got another battle. Universe, show me the way. But during those years, so I had like the hardest times were 7 years. That's when I did the ancestral work, the cultural work, society work, the familial trauma, grief, any type of trauma you can think of, patriarchal trauma. I was forced to go within and clear it. I had no choice. I couldn't run away with it. I had to sit with it. And the more I kind of cleared and cleaned it, the more I got deeper with my intuition and my connection. And that's when my coaching completely changed. It was all about so my program's called the Infinite Trust Method. So that is basically 7 years of deep work that I teach in the space of 4 months. And it's all about letting go of the past to make way for the forward. But you can't let go of the past until you take off all the onion layers. You can't love yourself until you take off those layers. You can't hold boundaries until you peel off those layers. And you definitely can't meet your inner child if you don't peel off those layers. There'll always be a blockage. And so that's what I teach with my clients now. We let go of lifetime of generational trauma and they come back home to themselves and they really know how to trust themselves. My work is not about depending on me. I make them independent to trust their intuition. Because again, I feel like women, we don't know how to trust our intuition because we were blocked in trusting our intuition, which I know we'll probably talk about later a bit more. But it's been a wild journey of how I got here. I still don't know how it happened, but I'm here. I just thought I was
I'm
going to be a
glad you are.
journalist. Yeah, that was my whole life. I thought that's it, be a journalist and that's it. But the universe had a bigger plan and I had to surrender.
Right?
Oh,
Are
by the
you
way,
better now?
yeah, I was just about to say I've reversed my kidney disease. So what basically happened after was I like prayed to the universe, God, I'm like, show me the way. There was a guy I'd been interviewed on this podcast years ago, and there was a guy after, and he was talking about health and well-being. And I remember just Googling like kidney disease, how do I like reverse it naturally? He came up and I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I read, I think it was like four of his books at the time, and I did this thing called, I don't know if you've heard, celery juice. I started doing celery juice, and then there was other protocols that he recommended. And within 7 months, I reversed my kidney disease. 4.5 years now,
Wow.
I have no kidney disease. I've also reversed chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia.
Good for
Wow,
you.
that's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. Like,
awesome.
thank you. Like, I couldn't travel. Like, it was so bad. Like, 10 years ago, I literally would go to the shops and I'd be tired. Or going up the staircase, I'd be tired. And this year, I went to Bali and just traveled. Like, it's like the biggest blessing that I got to take my health back. Like, I don't think
Right?
you realize that until you go through something like that. But I feel so blessed that I was able to find the tools to heal because I didn't want to go down the route of going down on dialysis. And, the weird thing is there is a link between my mum, like my mum worked in the kidney renal unit and she didn't even know what to do.
Wow.
So all she knew was like dialysis. And I was like, I do not want to be down that route. I need to clear this root cause and get back my power.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a long journey with that. My son's girlfriend's mom just actually got a kidney transplant. So I just knowing what she went through, and it's
Yeah.
so refreshing to hear you talk about, there is all these methods, and when we really open up to it and listen, we are guided to where we need to go to these different things. And I just find it so it's crazy how the universe works and brings us these messages when we're listening. But I think we mask a lot, like you were saying, and not healing our inner trauma makes it harder to listen to the universe when they're trying to tell us stuff.
That's the truth. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Because like,
amazing. So that was what was wrong the whole time then. Like when you were younger and passing out was all the same thing. Wow, eh? It took that
well,
long for them to diagnose it. That's
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
And it's
Uh,
just, I think it's weird how my mum worked in the kidney renal unit. I think that's where it was a bit
That's
more harder because it's like, it's my baby. I can't even help her because I know what the end result will be. And that's her expertise. And she didn't know
right.
what to do. And I think that's painful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it hereditary in your family too, or is it just no, just one of those things? Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? Yeah.
But what we did discover, this is more of like a spiritual route, is that mum worked with a lot of people that had fear. because they're in dialysis, they're at the last stages. She probably absorbed a lot of the pain because my mum's very highly sensitive. She
Mm,
absorbed the pain. So like obviously when she was expecting me, she was still working. So maybe there was somewhere down the line that I picked up and absorbed a lot of people's pain. Because I grew up with a lot of fear when I look back. I was always fearing about the worst case scenario. And when I started to clear the fear, I did start to feel better. So I don't know if that's like something mum had taken on without her realizing it. Because I believe in energy that we pick up from other people.
yeah.
Yeah, very likely. Yeah,
And
cool.
I think when we're giving birth or we're pregnant, and I think that yes, our energies and our feelings and emotions and things like that really do transfer into our children without us even realizing, right? I mean, we try to remain happy, but I mean, sometimes there is environmental factors, like with your mom, where she was working and dealing with those people's energies, and I think we just, unconsciously do that.
Yeah,
And then it's
yeah.
like, oh, that's where some of my trauma is from.
Darn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as well, like it's not, I just want to say, like, it's not, the parents' fault. Sometimes
No.
that's the journey of the child that they have to go through.
Yeah,
And so I obviously had to pick up those things to do the work that I do now. Because I guess if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have known how to self-heal. I would have known all these other tools. So I think, regardless of what's happened, like I'm grateful that it happened. And I always say that I'm grateful that the kidney thing happened because the way I was working in my business, I wouldn't be here right now. Like I was living off 3 hours sleep. I was being stupid. Like it taught me to slow down and surrender and trust the wisdom from within and let go of things that I didn't know how to let go of. I like I said, I was raised to just get on with things, but I wasn't raised to say, you know what, let's clear that. How are you feeling? So
yeah,
I really had to sit with those emotions and clear that. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything on my journey. Like it was meant to be the way it was.
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep, same. We're, we're meant to follow the path that we're given, and sometimes it just takes us longer to get where we need to go in the end. But that's okay, as long as we get there and we're practicing along the way, then we're good, I think, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. And I love how you talk about the inner work and peeling away the layers, because I think that's a really important thing for people to understand is that there is so many layers to us. And a lot of times we go through life, with this mask on that we're just pretending to be somebody, not that we're not, but we're putting on that mask to go out into the world to, say, I don't have this trauma, I don't have hurts, I don't have, I'm good, I'm great, my life is wonderful. And then, you know, all of a sudden things happen where it breaks it down, and then you absolutely have to deal with that. So
Right.
do you think there's a point when it comes, like, is there a point people can do this work before you get to the point of having that sort of deep night of the soul where you don't have a choice but to deal with it?
I think it's two ways. Some people just have that nudge and go, okay, I need to heal. But then some people like myself are like, oh, I'm just going to ignore the signs. No, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I don't have trouble. What are you talking about? I remember that. People are like, oh, maybe you have. No, no, I'm absolutely fine. So I think it's whatever your soul's journey is meant to be. We can't shift that. It's already written what's going to happen. So what we can do is listen to that gentle nudge first. But if we don't listen to that gentle nudge, then the universe is going to give it in a big bang.
Yeah, I have sometimes said, I need like the sign, like, but over the head with the neon and the, right? I'm not getting the little nudges anymore.
And the little signs could be like somebody talking to you on the train, saying something that's like very powerful and potent, but you're like, oh, that's interesting, but should I trust their judgment? Like, of course, like trust it because the universe brought that person to you. Of all of the people, why was that person having that conversation with you? That's a message from whether you want to call it God or universe. There's a sign there. But sometimes our ego goes, oh, no, 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 how could they know that? Oh, they don't know me. But there
Yeah,
is something there.
It is.
there is. There is. It was interesting the other day. We went to one of the markets around town, and we had walked in and mom was handing out our cards to people, and this lady said something. She ran the market and she said, oh, she turned over her card. She goes, oh, you're a reader. She goes, we were literally talking 2 minutes ago about having your readers lounge. And mom and I both kind of looked at each other and it was like, okay, this was meant to be. We were meant to be at this market right now with this, networking experience. So
Yeah.
it's interesting the way that, yeah, you're led to these different things that you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there's messages everywhere, but it's whether we're willing to listen to it.
Hmm.
Yes.
I know a lot of people think of numbers and numerology and things, but there's messages, wisdom through strangers, wisdom through that walk you might be going, and there's like a red robin. There's signs everywhere, but we have to be open to seeing it. And I think a lot of us are rushing life in general that we don't have that time to slow down and listen to that wisdom. Like I remember I call it as my old world. I used to run to work with toast in my mouth and heels in one hand. When would I have time to listen and slow down to think, why is this happening in my life? There was no way because I believed life was meant to be like that. So it's listening to those little pockets of wisdom and just sitting with it and thinking, what does that mean for me? I think that's what's key.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
is that where you find the inner peace then?
Oh gosh, no, inner peace. That's when you've done all the layers. I think when you have the layers, because I feel like, how can I explain this? When we're born, we're such this beautiful little child. We're so innocent, we're full of love, and suddenly the world corrupts us. Our family tell us this is how we need to be, friends tell us how this is how to be, school tells us how to be, society, cultural, you name it. Everybody's telling us how to be. And suddenly these
Yeah.
layers are being formed on top of us. Before we know it, we're like 15, we're deciding what our career path is. We're just applying for something for the sake of it. We don't know where we're going, if we're going to go to college or university, but we're going to apply anyway. I know some people they know where they're heading from a young age, but a lot of people feel lost. And I feel like these layers start to stop us from trusting ourselves. And before we know it, you're in your mid-20s or 30s and you don't know who you are anymore. You're this people pleaser, you're this sacrificer, and suddenly your peace doesn't exist because these layers are holding you back from having that inner peace. But when you start to work on each layer slowly, then you're starting to meet the real self, your true authentic self. And I always say this, we have so much knowledge of getting a job, but we have no knowledge of self. When have we actually sat down to almost like analyze ourselves? Like what excites us, what makes us happy, why do we feel sad? When we start to slowly peel off those layers, then we can have the inner peace. So I believe that my inner peace didn't happen until I peeled off those layers. Then when I started to love myself, then hold boundaries, then I started to listen to my inner child, and she's the one that brought me the most peace because I was nurturing her that I'd forgotten to nurture. And we all have an inner child. We just forget about her. She might just say to you, I want to go play. Go play. I want to create. Go create. But we forget to ask her what her needs are because they've been shut down by all these layers telling her who she needs to be and who she needs to become. And, follow the patriarchy, be like this, be a good girl, shut your legs, do this, all these layers that, of course, she's not going to know who she is because society is making her not know who she is. Whereas
Right.
boys, it's be who you want to be, do what you want to be. Obviously, they have other restrictions in other ways, like, they've been raised not to share their emotions. But as girls, like the wound is so deep and it goes back generational, not just mom, not just grandma, great grandma, and so forth. It's when patriarchy came in because women were powerhouses before. Women held the councils before. But somewhere in history, some little guy got really scared of us and decided to say we were the problem. Let's burn them, let's get rid of them, let's shut them down, let's take their power, their money, the days where a woman, like, if she got married, that her parents' property wouldn't be hers, it would be their husband's. I think, oh my God. But, there's all this deep wound, which is why it's so potent to do the inner work, because you've got to clear those layers off. It's not just your layers, you're pulling off generational layers of wounds that you've been holding on for the family lineage. And
Mhm.
I know when I started to do that deeper work, that's when the peace came in
That
and the
makes
fear went. I don't feel the same, but I don't care how society thinks of me or how I look, how I behave now, because I know the medicine within is more important than what the external world thinks I need to be.
mm,
But I had so many conditionings growing up that I couldn't see that. But then the peace came when knowing that I'm perfect the way I am. I don't need to be perfect for society, but I'm perfect, whole, and complete. And that's where the peace happens for people. When we know we're perfect, whole, and complete, nobody can take that peace away from you. You know, I remember years ago, one friend, his mate, oh, I can't remember what, I think I was at his flat, and we were talking, and his friend, he works in like cosmetics and all sorts, and he's like, "Do you want to get lip filler done?" And I'm not judging people that get these things done, you know, but I was like, "I don't need that." And he looked at me, "Why not?" And I said, "Because I love myself." And he looked at me like, "I've never heard anyone say that before." But it was a projection he was creating, trying to sell me
Yeah.
something. But I knew deeper that I didn't need that to feel perfect. I
Yeah.
knew I was perfect within however my lips looked. I couldn't care less, like if they're wonky or whatever. Like, but it taught me a lot about when we really love ourselves, that inner peace is what's created.
That makes
That's
sense.
very true.
What happens then? Because I just for myself, I'm thinking like when I was younger, I was very much my own mm, free self, I suppose. Like I dressed the way that I wanted to, wore my hair the way that I wanted to. I mean, I had some insecurities, but there was just a portion of me that I really didn't care what people thought when I went out
Mm.
in public and did things and said things, and I just really enjoyed life. And then I don't know, things happened, and then I sort of shut that down, and now I'm trying to recreate and find that again. So, what would you say if somebody sort of and I think I was probably on the cusp of trying to break some of those layers open to find that, but then it's like it shut it down. So I just am curious if I don't know if other people have that same thing happen to them.
Yeah, that's interesting you're saying that because actually I've had a few clients who are a lot older and they've said that to me. And I actually, when I think about it, and I've talked about it quite a while with like a few other people, I think you guys were born in the rebellion stage. So there's different stages of like history. So there's women like I call my mum the shoulder pad area. So they had to be bold and get out there and act like a man, even though they didn't need to act like a man. So maybe I don't know if you were born at a stage where women were being more rebellious and getting themselves out there. And so you're like, I'll be bold and I'll be free. But then somewhere in history, in the like moving forward, made you think that that wasn't good enough. But the thing is, you are good enough. It's looking from within, saying, what is it that makes me whole and complete? And I think that's the question to ask. Why am I afraid to be in my rebellion stage again? Who stopped me from being in my rebellion stage? What is making me scared of being in my whole and completeness? And I think when we start to ask these questions, we're talking to ourselves and we're getting the answers. So there's something there that needs to be asked. Like I know with one client, she was like in her 60s. I remember talking to her and we talked about her stage, and she's like, I was a rebellious person, then I met this person, and then it took away from me my energy, and then I lost myself. And we really worked about the family trauma, and then we worked on the stage where she was, and like she had to fight so many battles to be in that rebellion stage that it burnt her out. So what is it that she needed to come back whole to herself? And I remember we looked in and it was actually talking to her inner child saying, hey, what do you miss? What do you need right now? What will make you feel safe? Who will make you feel safe? How can we nourish her? And the moment she did that, she just came back and vibrant. I remember like she changed her hair color, how she used to have before. Like she was really in a powerhouse. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Yeah. No, it does very much so because I think that's yep, that makes a lot of actually makes a lot of sense, right? Because I was young and then I got married and had children. And so you're right, you're kind of shutting in
It's
those
the
walls a little
identity.
bit. Yep,
Yeah, it's like you had the identity of mum. So who is mum now, right?
that's right.
But who was mum before the kids?
That's right. That's exactly that's
And it's like,
exactly it.
yeah,
I was funny. I went to a drumming circle one time and they asked that question. They're like, well, they said, you need to introduce yourself. So you can use your name, but you cannot use, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a wife, and it was like, that was so scary. And you
yeah,
like I was dreading my turn. And I think everybody else was because you're just like, yeah, who am I without all of those labels, all those identifying things? Like, who am
Yeah,
I
it's
really
tough.
at my core?
I was
yeah.
going to mention that too.
I
It's tough.
was gonna say, Bob, like, what about yourself? Like, you've seen like the changes. Like, what was it like for you when you became a mum? Did you change your identity, or did it?
Oh my, yeah, because I was a young mom and, sort of caught in the act, I'll call it. I was so young. And, and the changes I've seen over this lifetime, it's interesting when I look at it now. because I take every lesson I've learned as something I needed to learn, but I also
Mm.
needed to teach that other person that lesson too, in
Mm.
order to make it right. And then, but then try to understand it after, why it would take place and how I
Yeah.
grew from each lesson because I've had, like, if I sat back and said, how many lessons have you learned in your lifetime? You went, oh my goodness, scratch my head, too many, right? So but when I sit back and think of them and try to, each time I'm going to go, okay, I learned that because,
Mm.
that was part of me and I didn't like that about me. So I needed to know how to get rid of that, right? Or I needed that part of me. So I need to grab that from that person to nourish what I need from me. So it's been part of a learning process along, and it still is.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
from talking to you today, there'll be lots of messages that I will take back from it. Some will be appointed to me, and some I will give to others. That's how I sort of, does that answer your question, sort of thing?
Yeah. No, I love that because I think what you're saying is that there was things that were uncovered and you were peeling off those layers, but then there was something somebody said that they were reminding of you what was missing, so you had to work on that and bring that back to you. And that is
Right,
like we were saying earlier on, it's the messages that people share as well. Sometimes we don't know we need that message and they give that message, and that's what we need in that moment the most.
right.
Mm.
It's when somebody says to you, you're a little bit like, you talk about somebody or something, and they say, you're a little bit like that too, right? And you go, oh, shit, no.
Like, what do
Learn a
you mean? And
lesson.
the boundary comes up, and you're like, oh no. Yeah. But then that's the magic, isn't it? That thing that pushes us and like, we have that boundary up is the reason what we need to clear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not so nice tasting it.
I think that's the wounded inner child, right? The wounded inner child goes, "How dare you?" We act like children when that happens, right? Our little inner
Yeah.
child comes out like, "How dare you say that about me?" Like,
Right?
why are you being
Okay, I guess, thanks.
mean?
I find it funny too, like when you reflect back, like for me, I was a fairly insecure like teenager and didn't have a very good body image. And so now it's really funny because now after all of these years, my mother will be
Yeah.
so excited to hear this. So now when I look back at old pictures of me when I was young, I'm like, "Oh, hey, I was really beautiful there. I was really whatever. I could now see that part of me that I couldn't see back when I was in like going through it kind of at that stage, right? So I feel like in those ways, like you're talking, I'm healing some of this inner trauma that I had that I'm now recognizing that light within myself where I couldn't at in that moment. So yeah, it's kind of just
That's
interesting
beautiful.
just what you find when you're reflecting on different things. I happened to be looking at pictures this morning to post something, so that's what made me think of it.
No, that's beautiful. And like, I'm picking up something for you actually that, if there's a picture of you that you're really proud of or the person you were at that time, put it in a frame and put it near your bedside table or put it somewhere where you can see it daily. And when you look at it, she's nourishing you.
Okay, thank you.
She's reminding you of who you were then, and you are still that person. You've just forgotten it, but you can go back to her at any time.
Perfect. Thank
Nice.
you. I will do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very
Yeah, because
nice.
I love having, photos of yourself when you're younger because we are fearless, right? We don't think much about the world. But then suddenly, as we get older, the world starts corrupting us. But in those early stages, like maybe I guess when we're born till about maybe 5, we're so free. Like, if you're happy, you run around. If you're sad, you know what I mean? You just do what you want. You run around in a circle going la la la. Nobody shouts at you and says, "What are you doing? That's not wrong." Most of the time, they're like, "Oh, she's just being. Let her be." Like, like that's the wisdom. Like our inner child holds that wisdom of what life is
Yes.
like. I just feel like sometimes parents back then thought they knew what life was, but actually the kids know what life is and they're trying to teach them be free, be happy, play, have fun. And that
Laugh
inner
more.
child, yeah,
Yeah.
get out, you're right. Yeah, go have fun and be in nature, right? But like that inner child is reminding you to be brave and be unique and be bold. So if you have a photo of her somewhere, like, even yourself, Barb, like if you put it next to your bedside table, she's always going to remind you of the power of who you always were.
Yes, that's true. And there's times in my life that I've been very powerful, and I liked it. You know,
But that's who you're meant to be, right?
and then when I sit back and think about those times, then it reminds me, what are you not doing right now to bring that back to you?
Mm.
Right? Yeah, because we get lost in our daily stuff that we do. I was going to comment on Kimmy's thing when she was younger and she was so much not looking at her body images. I was trying to make her and say, "You're beautiful just the way you are," you know? And no, I'm not. I was always thin.
Yeah.
And I've always been a very high energy kind of person. So she would look at me and she'd say, "Yeah, but you don't have to do anything and you just stay skinny." Right. So
Oh.
I was like, "I can't." We're busy. But, and it was just part of what she was going through at the time. But I was always really hounding her, too, like, don't think that way. Get back on, think about how you are thin and things like that, right? But
Yeah.
she was going some stuff, so she had to do her inner work too, right? And that's what I kept
Yeah.
thinking to myself, well, I can't keep grinding it into her because she has to establish that lifeline with herself, you know
Yeah.
in order to make it level for how she's going to feel about how she's going to be. So yeah, I just needed to
Yeah.
say that because I was just always skinny. She'd say, "You don't have to do anything. You're just so skinny. You make me laugh."
Bless you. But it's one of those things, isn't it? Like we put like our parents to a high level, right? And so we want to be
Yes.
like them as kids. So why
Yeah.
can't we look like them and dress like them and behave like them? But what we don't realize is we have our own identity, but we
Yeah.
haven't learned who our identity is, and we're actually powerful in our own identity. We don't need to follow what the family trend is or how the family looks.
Right.
We are powerful in our own essence. And I remember my mum, like she was always really slim, and then like she'd put on some weight, and then she'd like do all these crazy. I remember like the crazy diets in the 90s and all sorts. And I used to watch her go, "What is this?" And then I'd be like, "Oh, let me try it." I just try it for fun, but like I look back and think that was not normal behavior. Like you didn't need to do that. And yeah, I just think, especially as daughters, we look up to our mothers, but we don't realize that sometimes, how can I put it into words, that we don't need to follow that identity. We take the wisdom from what mom has, but we can follow our own identity and start to create our own wisdom.
Hmm. I love
Right.
that. I
Right.
think that's an
Yeah.
important message for people to hear because, right, we have this wisdom that we born with, that we came to this planet with, that is just brewing inside of us, ready to, erupt and create this beautiful life for ourselves. And we need to listen to that a little bit more than listening to, society and some of the things that we've been told this is what we need to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm picking something up actually with you. There's like there's someone in your lineage. I think it's on mum's side. I don't know if it's like great 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 grandma, but it's someone that your daughter looks like. It looks like, and
Okay.
she had this very powerful, intuitive wisdom. She was like a matriarch. She was the one that, like, how can I put it into words? Held like counsel, I'm gonna say.
Okay.
And someone needed to remember who they were, and she's there to remind you, and that's why you don't look like mum. Mum was the guide to get you
Uh,
to that stage, but you are kind of like that ancestor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. That's very interesting. Yes. We have lots of ancestors and all different sides there,
Yeah,
which makes
there's
it kind of
somebody.
interesting.
Yeah, there's somebody on your side. I don't know if it's like great 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 grand. I can't figure it out at the moment, but there is somebody that your daughter is very similar to,
Okay.
but the work didn't.
I could think of one. Yeah.
Oh.
I can think of one as you're telling me. Um, my dad's mom is Aboriginal, right?
Oh,
So, anyways, she takes a lot after her mom. Um,
it's Cherokee side, right?
yeah, on
I
Ojibwa
love.
side, yeah. So she takes a little bit after her. I never really saw too many pictures of her, but from the way that I hear that she was as a person, she reminds me a lot of Kimmy when she was yeah, about her age actually right now. Yeah, it's changes that she made. It's interesting. Thank you.
Yes,
I'm
thank
getting
Yeah.
you.
goosebumps as you're
Yeah,
saying that. So
me,
yeah,
me
that's the
too.
confirmation.
I'm like, eh.
Oh.
This is
Now,
cool.
now
So
you
she
know
had to
why.
call. Now I know when I'm calling the ancestors when I'm, it's so funny because everything I do, like I do that all the time, and my granddaughter always laughs at me, but I'll be cooking and she's like, what are you, like, what's your recipe? I'm like, I don't know. I just ask the ancestors. They just tell me what to put in there. Like, I don't know. I go with
I
it.
love that.
But I do
It's
that with
very,
everything, right? Because then I think some of that is our intuition that we've been guided and we call on these guides and ancestors and our, God, and they help us down our path of who we're supposed to be and where we're supposed to go. And when I think when we're ready, that's when we find people like you that are like, hey, let's peel away your layers and get down to it and really be able to let that light and flame inside of you glow out for the world to see.
Yeah.
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 And you know what's interesting as well is that I don't know if you felt the same, like both of you, but I used to be afraid of my ancestral side. Like, so I'm born in the UK, but my parents are Indian. And so I used to kind of felt like I had a lost identity crisis because I went to like really English schools, like my friends were diverse, but I didn't understand the history of my mum and dad's side and the wisdom that it had. It's only as I've got older that I really appreciate it. And like there is so much knowledge there that I now feel my ancestors talking to me and guiding me, but I wasn't ready when I was growing up. And I feel that's the same with you guys. Like there is so much knowledge there, especially the Cherokee side. Oh my God, I love that side. Like there's so much powerhouse there and energy. You know, you guys are really connected to nature. And there's like they're calling you to work on that deeper level to know more about yourself because there's more wisdom that you guys are meant to share in the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Appreciate that. I
It's pretty cool because I always used to say to myself when I was growing up, because my father was Native, right? And my
Yeah.
grandmother was two full blood. And people would ask me about my grandparents. And when I was really little, when I was really, really little, I thought it was cool to have
definitely.
a grandma that was a Native, that was Indian, and my dad was Indian, right? And you get into your teens, and then people look at you like, because that's where
Yeah.
you start getting into school and they judge you, right? So then you hold
Yeah.
back from saying what you are.
Yeah.
And so instead of trying to say what I was, and like I would say, oh, I'm kind of like a Heinz 57, and I'm good with that, right? Which was true, but I was okay
Nice.
with it just the same because you have so many different sides of you because your two parents, right?
Yeah.
And so when everybody's, well, yeah, my grandfather was German, and or my grandmother was German, my grandfather was French, my other grandfather was Native, but also Irish, and then my other
Wow.
grandmother was Native. So when they asked me, I'd say, "Hi, 57." I relate to them all.
That's
You
funny. But
know?
all of the ancestry has knowledge there. You know, you've got so much knowledge from different cultures. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I
It's
think
cool.
that's something we need to celebrate more. I know for me, I know now it's different. Young kids like they celebrate, their history, and I think that's beautiful. But like for me growing up, I know for me it was an identity crisis, but like I now see the power of, owning our cultures and our identities, even the foods like
Yes,
this. I remember years ago talking to somebody and she did like epigenetics and she was saying, and I think it was just after my operation, she was saying, when we get sick, we should eat our ancestors' food because that's what nourishes us. And she's 100% correct because at the moment I started eating more of my ancestors' food is when I started to get better as well.
Mhm. Interesting.
good one. That's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. That
Because
makes
that's
sense.
because if you think about it, our DNA is based on those ancestral foods, it's lineages of that. And then suddenly we go with burgers and fast foods and all sorts. And obviously our body's like, what are you doing to us? And then
Yeah.
we have our ancestors' food and it's just so nourishing and wholesome and warm and
Yeah,
that's meant to be. There's a reason why we crave certain things of our ancestors, food. It makes
Yeah.
sense.
It does make sense. It
it
makes a lot
does.
of sense. And I think really like people just need to really tune into what their bodies are saying. And we're guided to that stuff. You know, most times we're not guided to, well, some people are guided, I guess, to go have a hamburger, but like we're usually guided towards these things that are good for our body and nourish our body a lot more. In,
Yeah.
always like in food and spirituality and, do you find that like you've been guided down some of the paths of your lineage, like in that way, like in a spiritual way?
Oh, 100% because I'm so grateful that I started my journey, yeah, it's only been no, it has been 13 years. Oh my God, I get confused. It's been 12 years since I've been sober, 13 years since I did the inner work. It'll be coming up to 14 years soon. But had I not listened to my intuition when I quitted drinking, I might not have had my kidney. So my intuition led me to stop drinking 12 years ago. And there's a
Wow.
history within my lineage of drinking. And I'm like the first on one side to clear that. So that again, that was me listening. And then a few years later, I was like, let's be a vegetarian, even though I loved meat. But my intuition said, let's cut the meat out. Now, again, if I didn't cut the meat out, I wouldn't have my kidney because too much meat in for kidneys is the protein. It's bad for kidneys. Again, as alcohol. So I was being intuitively guided without knowing. And then when I got diagnosed with the kidney disease, I was like, what the heck? And the kidney problem, I was like, I'd already been working on it years before that, and I didn't
Yeah.
even know. And then I ended up
Yeah.
becoming a vegan towards the end because that was one of the things, the protocols that I followed. But it was just intuitively. But when I look at the history of women in my lineage, on both sides, back in the day, women didn't really eat meat in my family lineage. It was more the men in those days. So of course I used to feel tired and, fatigued all the time when I used to eat meat. But I do miss it. I'm not gonna lie. Like I miss me. I'm not gonna lie though. But there was a reason why my body was not meant to have it, and that's because it's linked to my ancestors, but it's also linked to the intuition of my body knowing what was right for me and what wasn't. And I did notice when I did have meat, I used to be a bit more angry, and I
Mm.
think it's because I used to pick the energy of the pain of the animals when they'd
Mhm.
be slaughtered. I think I would pick that up, but I used to always feel really uncomfortable.
I have
Whereas
heard that
yeah, and then
from
when I
different
stopped
people
eating,
that have become vegan, very much so that, right, I'm taking on that energy when I'm eating it, and it just doesn't suit my body. And I mean, and it's hard for people
Yeah.
to understand that. Like my stepdaughter, she's vegetarian, and she said, I had to. She goes, I love meat, but my body does
mm,
not love it. It's like I've got
yeah,
to honor my body because every time I eat it, I feel nauseous or I feel
Yeah.
tired or I feel whatever, right? So I'm like, well, obviously that's what you're being told to do. So do that,
yeah.
Yeah.
But
right?
it's
Do
the
those good things that.
but I think it's the quality of meat. Like I was talking to somebody about this a while back. Like
I
I
do.
remember when like chicken tasted like chicken, like you could pull off the pieces and they were just like beautiful layers. Like, I loved sausages, I loved bacon growing up. Oh my God. Like and then I remember like 13 or 14, the taste wasn't the same. And it's very watered down. I know in the UK it's been like that. I know in Canada, like I remember going, oh God, I forgot what it's called now. I don't know if it was Chat Relay or that might have been the clothes shop, but there was somewhere that would like had like specialism in meat in Canada. And I remember
Right.
going there in 2010 going, wow, this meat's great. But it was so different to the UK. So I do think the quality of meat also affects how we feel about it as well.
Mhm.
And I know in some ancestors, like meat is a big deal. Like I think there was one client of mine, like Hungarian, like meat has been part of her for generations. And I'm like, of course,
Yeah.
eat it. If that's part of your lineage, eat it, right? But for somebody on my side, yes, the men ate it, but the women didn't. So maybe my body is saying no because of that as well, and the kidney. So I've got to honor that, even though I miss meat. But it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think there's important messages in that, and I think you've given us so much information. Holy smokes. I'm just like, I just want to go sit down and peel my layers now. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I can help you if you
Perfect.
want.
So, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, so you've got my website, which is www.gurdshundal, so that's GURDSHUNDAL.com. You can find me on Instagram at I am Gurds, on Facebook, I am Gurds. You can find me on Spotify, Apple, at the Inner Light Project. And yeah, if you just type in my name into Google, it comes up with everything. So I'm around.
Perfect. Well, we have appreciated talking to you and have learned so much. So, if you had a final message to leave with us and our followers, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to do the right thing because the right thing might just take you on the path that you're always meant to be. And trust that that path will be greater than what you actually thought your life was going to be. And the past is just the past. The future, even though it hasn't been written, it's that light that you're looking for. And that light will never let you go or let you down. But you've got to
Beautiful.
let the darkness go to be in the light. Yeah. Very
Wow.
poetic.
I love that.
Very nice. I
Well,
like
thank
that.
you.
Thank you. I was guided. I trusted.
Yeah, right.
You are.
You could tell you were just like, okay, I'm channeling this out to everybody. But it was beautiful. So
Thank
again,
you.
thank you so much for being on with us. It was such a pleasure having you on. We just enjoyed ourselves so much. And I know mom's probably the same way. My brain is just like trying to digest all the information that we just heard. So
Some information.
thank you
Long as
so
it,
much for being with us.
thank you. Thank you, thank you. And yeah, just I love you guys as well. Just beautiful energy of just talking as I always want to call it like sisterhood. Like I know you're
Yes.
mother daughter, but I felt like a sisterhood happening today, and it was just
Nice.
beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah,
Thank you. Felt like a daughter too. You're
I'll
very
take
full
that.
of energy.
I'll take that aboard. Why not?
Yeah, yeah, I
Thank
agree
you.
with you. So thank you so much. And everybody else, we will see you the next time.
You bet.